True story. Came out to the Coachella Valley, specifically to the BMW Performance Center West at Thermal Track to drive a host of cars. You may have already seen the M340i episode or the M850 episode. Well, on that shot list was this, a Z4. But I got here in the morning and there was no Z4 on the track. I said, hey man, where is it? And they're like, well, that's only a street drive because it's a convertible. And I'm like, but your gas and your tires and track time, we gotta fix this. Well, I bought somebody lunch, they changed their mind, and here we are today, Z4, which we're gonna drive on that track. What you and I are about to discuss should sound very familiar to you if you either A, a BMW fanboy, or B, watched our M340 first drive. Either way, let's cover it here because it's important in a shorter car that only has two doors and a folding top. Currently, there are only two engines on offer, at least in the Americas, for the Z4. Starts with the B46, which is a 2-liter, 4-cylinder, direct injected gasoline turbocharged engine. 255 horsepower, comes in at 5,000 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 6,500 RPM. Then there's the torque, and I'm always more interested in the torque because that's what actually motivates the car, but here, it's a 2-liter 4-cylinder, puts out almost 300 pounds of torque, in this case 295 pounds, comes in at 1,550 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 4,400 RPM. Then there's the 6-cylinder, and that's the B58. We talked about this in the Supra episode, and I know there was a lot of discussion about the non-potent version, the 335 horsepower it's going to be in the Supra, and then there's the potent version, which is going to be in the Z4. This one is good for 382 horsepower, comes in at 5,000 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 6,500 RPM, and then 369 pounds of torque, again, in a two-door convertible car. That comes in at 1,600 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 4,500 RPM. Then, like I said in the 3 Series episode, anything you want, as long as it's an 8-speed automatic. And here's where the 295 pounds of torque comes in. Oh yeah, that does make a difference. Throttle mapping changes, come around here, let's kiss the cone. Oh, it makes a huge difference. It actually digs a little deeper at 77, 85. You can hear it working hard, but it works. That's what we're learning here. It works. I'm not gonna lie, I don't like the sound of this engine as much as I do the B58, whether it's the low-fat B58 or the full-fat B58 that we drove in that M340. But listen, not bad for a 4-cylinder. I'm not complaining. I guess I am. All right. Before you condemn me for putting a 911 in a BMW episode, just listen. Dimensions of the new Z4. 170.7-inch length, 97.2-inch wheelbase. Wheelbase of arguably the best driving car in the world, 96 inches. Perhaps a coincidence that this was a target in its driving dynamics? I think not. Then there's the weight. The 6-cylinder, 3,443 pounds, and the 4-cylinder we are driving, 3,287 pounds. Go back and look at our 992 episode and look at the weight of the base car there. Now that you know that there is a method to my madness, back to the BMW. Remember the weight distribution we talked about in the Supra tech review, how it's perfect. 50-50 weight distribution. They say the same thing here. And when you're in Sport Plus mode, you can kind of believe it because the dive and the squat in the back are very much managed in Sport Plus, not so much in comfort mode. You can steer with your right foot, which is a nice thing. All of a sudden, it cleans everything up. You get some lean still, but it's way more composed front to back. This is a short wheelbase car, so let's understand high-speed stability. Flat out on the back straight, we're touching 100 miles an hour, really beautifully stable. Brake, 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 brake. Let's not go into that house there. A little under-braked, I must say, this car. I do like the seating position. It's especially when you're going 100 miles an hour in the front straight. But I do like the seating position. Brake, 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 brake. Aside from the engine and the money, what's the difference between an M40i and an S30i? Well, an M40i adds electronic limited slip differential, adjustable dampers, and M Sport brakes. Now, if you've been paying attention to the M340i, that sounds very familiar. However, one could get an S30i with something called a track handling package, which, you guessed it, has electronic limited slip differential, adjustable dampers, and M Sport brakes. So, brakes. Wasn't expecting much coming into this, but do need to share a bit behind the scenes. You may have seen an M340 episode and an M850 episode at the same track. Those two cars I drove before this. The M340s, man, they had been beat to an inch within their lives, and I gotta say, the pads do need to be replaced. We'll come back to you on the brakes on that one, but this one, this is a fresh car. Like, I talked Alex from BMW into putting this on the track for us, because I really needed to get through this episode, and the brakes work. They're not the biggest ones. The rotors do increase in diameter in the M40, but these, they cash the checks the engine writes. Kind of surprised. I will say, as we come off that back straight coming into this turn, not designed for track use. Like, I think the third person that's going to be driving this car probably will need to replace those pads, but still have to say vielen Dank to BMW for giving me a fresh car on the track. Whether you like it or not, the Z4 looks so much cooler than the one that came before it, or even the Z3. And I own two of them. I own the Z3 2.8 and a Z3M. But it's not a design trick, it's an engineering trick. In the back, the track width is wider by 2.45 inches, and in the front, it's wider by 3.86 inches. You don't get it until you see it in person, but it's not only the aesthetics that are the beneficiary, there's something else. Let's talk steering as we come around this lovely turn here. Yes, you expect better steering when it's billed as Freude am Fahren. However, more direct than I expected in a Z4, especially one with a four-cylinder engine. There is minimal inputs, as you can tell by that camera over there. Hopefully you can tell by that camera over there. But notice what happens as we get to this turn, which is a nice hairpin as we get into the more technical part of the track. Brake, 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 brake. You would expect this to be a bit more sloppy in the lesser of the two Z4s, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised, especially when you're on a more technical track like this. Works incredibly well. I'd be really interested to try it on the more powerful M40. I gotta say, man, this is actually a lot more fun to drive than I thought. This is good. It's downright good. I expected the four-cylinder to be, I'll say it, kind of like a girl's car, but this has a hell of a lot more confidence than a girl's car. I'm gonna do it. Point out the Captain Obvious. This generation of Z4 is a quantum leap forward for the BMW Z4, but it wasn't until I got home, had some time to reflect, that I realized how big of a jump it was. You see, in previous discussions, we never put the Z4 and the Boxster in the same sentence. Yeah, maybe when we had a money discussion, but nothing else. Now it's to a point where, is it as good as a Boxster? No, I'm not saying that. But it no longer embarrasses itself against the Boxster, and add to that, it has a bit of a different personality where it's now in the hunt, where it previously wasn't. Why? I honestly don't know. I don't know if BMW put more money into this, or perhaps the investment from, say, another car company made this and another future product better. Either way, it's a totally different experience. Until I see you next time, bis später. I'm gonna throw it out there, and you may punch the screen and never talk to me again, but If the Z4 is this good in the basic setting with a 4-cylinder, I got high hopes for that Supra. It ain't a Toyota, but I got high hopes.